and good day, everyone, or good evening. Today, Lauren and I are going to talk about word shifting. Like, how much do words matter? Do they really shape how we think, how we relate, how we make sense of the world? And just what happens when we start changing the meanings of words to fit an agenda or I don't know, just to avoid getting flagged online. So there's a lot to unpack here. I find this to be a pretty fascinating subject. So I say we just dive right in. Lauren, I'm so glad that you're here and not unalived, and I am happy to report that I am not unalived and well.
That is wonderful. I wouldn't say that I'm well, Loree, but
Oh
I
no.
am here and I am certainly not unalived. So that is great news. Who made that word up?
I mean, honestly, I don't know where that came from, but it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Uh,
It is ridiculous.
what what do you think about this? I mean, it's been going on for a while now there's been a little bit of it started really, I would say, I started noticing the co-opting of our English language at least 15 years ago. And it
Oh,
has,
wow.
yeah, I started going, wait a minute, just a little subtleties here and there. But now it is bonkers. It's off the rails.
Mhm.
So I don't know. What are you hearing?
Well, the unalived is one that still catches me off guard, and I have to like slow down, make my brain register what that means, and then try to catch up to whatever the speaker is saying. So I hear that one a lot. I listen to podcasts. I hear that one a lot on podcasts. I see it on social media,
Mhm.
and it does really take me out of the story while my brain processes what that means. Another one that I see a lot is instead of sex, people will say segs, like
What?
eggs with an S at the front.
Wha-
Um, Again, like it takes me a minute to figure out what I'm reading.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yes. And then I saw this actually, that I sent this to you, Lori. This is kind of why we're here. I
Yeah.
saw this posted on Threads, and I would call out this user and give her credit for it, but she may want to remain anonymous. I don't know. Friend, if you're listening, let us know. We'd be happy to shout you out. She wrote on Threads, using the word grape instead of rape is really bothersome. Call
Uh-huh.
it what it is instead of censoring it. S-aid, that's sexual assault. Unalived, it's murdered. Don't add safety words on truly disturbing situations.
Mhm.
Censorship has made the world soft on subjects that aren't supposed to be soft. What's your take on this, Lori?
Oh, geez. Well, good on her. I agree. On some level, like on the surface, this might seem, oh, so clever. But in my humble opinion, it is signaling something far more concerning. I mean, there are a lot of serious core dangers around this trend of changing language, changing the meaning of words, obviously, substituting words that seem somehow softer or more ambiguous, than what they're actually referring to. That's a slippery slope. And I think that if you don't really think deeply about this and do your freaking homework on why language is so important, then society is lost when you lose truth in language. I mean, first of all, clarity is compromised, right? I mean, it's we have a language because it's a tool to communicate and to communicate clearly. And when we start scrambling up the meanings, well, then we lose the ability to communicate clearly and effectively. And the more we scramble things up, the less we can think critically. So that's one point. And
Yes, I wanna expand on that a little
yeah.
bit. When I was a full-time journalist and I worked in a newsroom,
Mhm.
we had so many of these conversations about what do these words mean and are there other words that convey the meaning more accurately. So one that comes to mind specifically was we had what's called an anchor read. So the anchor is on TV reading the story And the producer, who is one of the primary writers of the newscast, wrote aggravated battery. This person was charged with aggravated battery. And the anchor, for whatever reason, breezed through it and just said charged with battery. And those are different charges.
Uh-huh.
So your words do matter. I think
Mhm.
the anchor, when confronted with it later, was kind of like, well, they're basically the same thing. They're both battery. People don't really know the difference. That's not our responsibility to change it because they don't know the difference. They can look it up if it's very concerning or they need to know. But
Right.
yeah, if we got on the news and said that somebody had been graped or S8 or unalived, that's not how it works. You know what I
No,
mean?
no.
That's not real.
We'd be looking at each other going, did I miss something?
What's going on?
What? Yeah. And the very fact that that anchor said, well, people don't really know the difference is the whole reason why you want to speak it clearly.
Right.
Otherwise, now you're ensuring that they don't
Right.
know the difference.
Exactly.
You've just glossed over it.
If I'm a thoughtful person sitting at home watching the news and I say, what's the difference between an aggravated battery and
Yeah.
just your standard run of the mill battery? I'm going to look it up and now I'm enlightened. So that's what we're
Exactly.
supposed to do, is deliver accurate information and people can learn more about it if they need to.
I like that. Um, I imagine. Yeah, I forgot. You probably were privy to a lot of that
Oh yeah.
wordsmithing in that role. Interesting. So, and that's the other thing is another thing I should say is there tends to be a distortion of reality, kind of to that point, when you start wordsmithing. I mean, if we can change the meaning of a word or make something ambiguous, like just dropping the aggravated part of battery. Now what you've done is you've literally changed the perception of the reality of the situation, right? So when you do that, it may seem on the surface like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Like people can figure their stuff out. But this is exactly how really dangerous ideologies take root. So
Mhm.
when you start swapping out words, dropping words, changing the meaning of words, now everyone's perception of what's actually happening is blurred. It's vague. And now you have this perfect setup for this infection of negative or dangerous ideologies. And we've seen that going on now. It's really built up here in the last, I would say, 10 years, 6 years, 5 years. I mean, it's just like, it's gotten ridiculous. And that leads into speech censorship then, right? It's like speech censorship in this disguise. It's like this sort of soft coercion. So, I think that a lot of people that are voicing, whatever it is they're talking about, their opinions and such, responses to things online, and if they're using these code words, it's not always because they want to. For some, yes, because they have a specific purpose. But most people are just doing it to avoid punishment, right? That's not freedom of speech. That's coerced language.
Mm.
Right? It's an intentional manipulation attached to a threat. You say it this way, not that way, or there will be consequences, which, as we all know, you get shadow banned, you get shut down, you get canceled. So that's very manipulative. It's coercive, and you have to call it what it is. That's exactly what
Yes.
it is, right?
Yeah. So in the aftermath of the pandemic, I noticed Instagram specifically, I'm sure there may have been others, but if you posted anything about having a fever, wearing a mask, it could have been like a Halloween mask because it's an algorithm that doesn't know what you're talking about. They would put the flag on your thing and say, learn more about COVID-19. And I never looked at it. I don't know what was under there. Was that propaganda about COVID-19? So I would then, if I saw that it was going to flag my content, I would change my entire caption because I just didn't want that there specifically because nothing I posted was relevant to COVID-19.
Yeah. Yeah. So there you go. You've had to edit yourself
Mhm.
to avoid being punished.
We don't wear Halloween masks. We wear Halloween coverings or
I-
Halloween disguises. You know what I
you
mean?
know,
Like it was such a weird time.
it's idiocy is what it is,
Mhm.
but it's very manipulative, and I have a real issue with it. Not only that, but using soft and silly language for serious issues. I mean, that can really start to desensitize people to the real trauma, real violence, or serious injustice. So you start using a word like grape instead of rape. It's Looney Tunes. That's just stupid.
Mhm.
Why would you do that? It's so disrespectful to victims when you use stupid words that have nothing to do with what you're actually trying to talk about or the message, right? Um, when you do that to refer to a serious situation. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Why is there so much fear or this intention to substitute stupid words or words that absolutely have nothing, a fruit to refer to a violent act? Why would you do that? Because that's not
I
a
that's very
censorship thing,
weird.
right?
Yeah, it's very, very weird. And the SA instead of sexual assault,
Yeah.
I was kind of witness, a little bit involved where I needed to be. A heated conversation. This was a long time ago, not a year ago, probably. Pretty heated conversation. People I care about were talking about not about sexual assault directly, but it came up, and the person who brought it up said SA. And again, it took me completely out of the conversation while my brain was like, "What is that?" And I know that the older people in the room who were a part of this conversation must have been in the same place, but it really distracted from the point that was trying to be made and the conversation that was being had
Mm-hmm.
because she wasn't talking about San Antonio. She was talking about sexual assault. Say it, name it, call it
Right.
out so that we can have the conversation that we're having. By
Mm-hmm.
the way, this was a closed door conversation among,
Mm-hmm.
close people, and
Right.
no one would have canceled her for saying it. I
Right.
still just don't understand why this
Mhm.
is just the normal vernacular anymore. But again, we would never get on the newscast and say so and so was SA'd or this person's been charged with SA. That's not a thing.
So why is somebody trying to make it a thing? Why
Why are we
wouldn't you
making it a
just
thing?
why wouldn't you just use the language?
Right.
It's it's a weird thing, but you
It is
know,
weird.
so so there's that. But then here's the other thing, that when one group, let's say there's which is happening, when one group uses their own sort of dictionary dialogue, uh, uh how do you have a meaningful come to meaningful understanding about anything with other people, kind of like to that point, but it on a broader perspective, like your own coded language or dictionary of certain words, that especially pertaining to a particular belief system, you can't come to any sort of understanding, because it's impossible. And so then what happens is when people they're either distracted and you've lost them in whatever it is you're trying to say. You've lost their attention because now they're trying to figure out what you're talking about. So they're no longer
Mhm.
really engaged, right? And then if they do end up figuring it out, again, it's hard to start to continue to listen because the whole thing has been derailed, and you now
Mhm.
are coming from different sort of dictionaries, different
Right.
languaging, right? So when people start doing that, instead of listening, they start labeling each other. They start labeling groups, right? So another thing that gets kind of thrown under the bus is that mutual understanding. Even if you don't agree, at least you can understand each other. So
Right.
yeah, it's a really slippery slope. If you think about it, did you ever read George Orwell's 1984?
Yes. Long time ago.
Yeah, I read it too, and it's so prophetic. But this kind of wordplay, it might
Mhm.
feel harmless to some people right now, which is extraordinarily naive. But history tells us that those who control the language control the people.
Hmm.
And that's one of the things, the main points that Orwell is making in his very famous book, News Speak, right? It was not just something that made for a great story. It was literally a warning. And we're seeing this play out. We've seen it play out. In communist countries, if you speak your mind and say the wrong thing, especially if it's perceived as criticism of the government or its leaders, you will find yourself in prison,
Mhm.
period. So there is no freedom of speech or press in those societies. The state controls everything, all the media, all the communication. Any foreign media is banned. And if you start to try to access it or voice an opinion, then that's going to lead to very severe punishment, which could include prison camps, torture, starvation, just imprisonment. Oh, by the way, and then there's guilt by association. So that means that the family members of the accused, sometimes for 3 generations, can also be punished.
Wow.
Yeah. So, people that's why I say it's naive and you need to do your homework. If you think that
Right.
this is harmless, and it's just trying to be nice, or sensitive so you don't trigger people, it's naive, and you need to understand the deeper implications. It's already been done and it's horrific. The results
Mhm.
are awful. So do your homework, people. So,
As far as triggering people, I think if you're at risk of being upset by these types of things in conversation, you probably shouldn't be a part of that
mhm,
conversation. If we're directly discussing rape, sexual assault, suicide, murder, and these are topics that are sensitive to you, I don't think changing that single word, but the context remaining what it is, I don't think that makes a difference. You're
mhm.
you're either triggered by it or you're not. I almost you may have touched on this when we first started talking, Lori, but is it some type of signaling of, I'm trying to be sensitive to other people, but you're not because you're still having the conversation, which is fine. But if somebody's sensitive to it, they are. They're still sensitive if you're
Yeah.
having the conversation with different words.
Yeah. And there is, of course, a fair amount of virtue signaling that goes on. And there are, you know, so whatever. And there are people that think, that they're doing something kind and they're trying to be thoughtful and empathetic. But you really, you can't, if everyone tries to adjust and edit themselves to not, you know, trigger somebody else in society, then nobody will ever be able to say anything because you can't adjust and edit for every single person's personal situation. And it's not
Mhm.
about, it's not about not feeling empathetic for another person's pain. But to your point, if you are someone that has sensitivities that you are still hopefully trying to work through and heal yourself so that you aren't vulnerable, then you have to remove yourself from potential situations like that. That's incumbent upon the person with the issues, not everyone else to adjust. You can't expect 99% of the population to adjust for the 1% that have things that, not to minimize them, that are serious, but that's their responsibility to do the work that they need to work to heal. And if they're still in that process, then you know they should avoid being in places or being online and in threads and in conversations where that's a thing. So, I feel for people that have serious things like that. It's rough. People with PTSD and stuff, that's a real thing. But
Mhm.
but that's their responsibility to get the help that they need to work through the thing. And if you're finding
And I
yourself,
think
yeah, go ahead.
speaking in code in the presence of those people, it just insults their intelligence. I don't think it helps them avoid the feelings, correlated to whatever they've been through or witnessed or whatever. I think it's just an insult to think that saying segs instead of sex is going to fool anybody.
Exactly. I think that's a good point. Yeah. So you have these ripple effects, I guess you could say, in society. So like, when the meanings of words are constantly shifting, kids grow up in a world without these language or linguistic anchors, right? It messes with their ability to learn, to reason, and to trust what they hear, because there's no clear, everything's been, again, sort of watered down or means something else. How can you possibly reason and trust anything when everything has been, words have been so hijacked, right? So then there's the issue of morals and values. Culturally, we erode our morals and our shared values. If we can't even agree on what words mean, how can we agree on what's right or wrong?
Right.
What's
I
acceptable
want to go
and
back to the
unacceptable?
kids really quickly, Loree. Sorry.
Yeah.
This it's kind of the opposite of something that was happening when my kids were very little and they were learning how to talk. And a lot of the parenting experts and even the social media experts, people who are not really experts but have a lot of opinions online, made a big deal about, and I don't know if they still are. I really am kind of out of these circles for the most part, but a really big deal at that time about teaching children proper terms for anatomy, because we need to know what's going on with your anatomy if there's something going on, right?
Mm.
So if uncle touched my cookie, that's very different from uncle touched my penis. So that was the point there in teaching children the proper way of talking about these things. And I
Mhm.
remember feeling so turned off to that at the time because I had these precious innocent babies and
Mhm.
nothing like that's ever going to happen to them anyway.
Mhm.
But now we've kind of swung so far in the other direction. Grape, are you eating grapes for lunch or is this a crime? You know what I mean? This what?
Yes. Let's talk more about the grapes. Just- yeah. I think it is easy because it's uncomfortable for most parents to, want to start teaching their kids about, the private parts.
Right.
But, and that is just a weird cultural thing. It's not like that in all cultures, but it is in our culture. But when you think of it, it's really silly. I mean, you start teaching kids when you can start communicating with them, and even if they can't say the words yet, they understand what you're saying because you point to your nose and you say nose, your ear, your elbow, and you start, your foot, and you start going through and naming body parts so that they can start to connect the dots. But it's real easy to want to avoid the actual words that describe the
Right.
private parts,
Right.
and
But, God forbid your child have to share information with an authority or with you
y-
and
y-
not
yeah,
be heard because they're not saying what
right.
needs to be said in
R-
that situation. So
yeah.
it's
So,
just so interesting how quickly that tide has turned.
yeah, I think it's a smart idea to actually just say what the thing is, say what the parts are, and not get
You're
your
not even saying them right now, though.
parts.
You're
Well,
so uncomfortable with this.
I can say vajayjay. I mean,
My
hey,
daughters do say private parts.
private
It
parts,
is what it is.
so yes, we can leave that for everyone to deal with in the privacy of their own homes
Right.
with their children. But I get it. I mean, I do get it. I was bringing up little ones at once too, and I'm guilty of the same thing. So
It just seems like it's the same people who were saying our 18-month-old needs to know the word penis are the same ones who now are saying so and so was unalived. And I'm like, who are you? Like,
see, there you go.
yeah.
That means that those people have gotten caught in this social trend, if you will, of manipulating language under the guise that it's to be helpful and thoughtful to others. And that's the danger right there, because it's
Okay.
that soft, it's a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Mm. I do want to applaud them for being considerate of other people, but no good deed goes unpunished. So, what are we creating by
Well,
altering
yeah.
our language to that degree?
Yeah. And defining it as a good deed is the misconception right there.
Fair.
Right. So there we go. Anyway, what else is going on?
What else is going on? Well, Lori, we had kind of a little grab bag of things I wanted to discuss today.
Yeah.
So this was a headline, and it caught my attention because it happened in my hometown.
Okay.
So a 24-year-old father was arrested for this happened in Georgia. He left his 3 kids who were 10, 6, and 1 at McDonald's while he walked to a nearby job interview.
Hmm.
So I thought to myself so many different things. The very first thing I thought was he's 24 with a 10-year-old. My goodness, bless him. But
Huh.
the next thing I thought was I thought of an episode that we recorded not too long ago, Lori, about how parents don't always have the resources and the help that they need. It's not like he left them at McDonald's so that he could go on a date. He didn't leave him at McDonald's to go get an oil change or something that can happen at a different time. He's trying to secure employment to take care of his children. And in fact, he walked to the job interview. And if this is the McDonald's that was in the photograph, which I assume it was because this was a news outlet, that is a busy roadway. So it's while most people could walk a mile, you wouldn't walk a mile on this road. He probably left them and walked 2 blocks at most. What do you think about this? He's arrested for this.
Okay, so that's a tough one. Okay, so the 10 and the 6-year-old, I could cut him some slack on that. I think that at that age, especially the 10-year-old, could understand, can you guys just, sit here and eat your fries and your McWhatevers while I go take care of this. Clearly, he was between a rock and a hard place, I would imagine. If he's a responsible enough person that he is trying to get a job and he was, stuck, I get why you would kind of do something a little bit that would be on the edge, for sure. But 10 and 6, I think if they're well-behaved kids, you probably, and you thought, okay, this is probably going to be, maybe 45 minutes, whatever. I would kind of give them the benefit of the doubt. The 1-year-old, that one is like, oh, that's, I mean, a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old and a 1-year-old, a baby.
Right. At what age do you trust your oldest child to look after the youngest? Because I'm with you that 10, I think, is a little young to be responsible for an infant in public by yourself.
On top of
I'm with you on
6-year-old.
that.
Yeah.
And is he then leaving the burden of taking care of his kids on the public and on this private business? Maybe that. I thought of all of those things too. But yeah, this is a hard one.
It is.
I do feel like I got to an age at some point where my parents took me and my sisters and we went to a movie without my parents. It wasn't 10. But is it not on the parent to decide, at what age he can take his kids somewhere unsupervised? I don't know that there's a law that
I don't
dictates
either.
this.
That's a good question. It was very risky for the man. I mean, I think super risky, especially because of the baby. I think if it would have been just the 10-year-old and the 6-year-old, I don't know that anyone would have, really been paying that close of attention to the situation. But when the man disappears and there's a 10-year-old, a 6-year-old, and an infant, that probably got some people's attention that saw him leave perhaps. And then, he didn't just go out to his car to get something and come back in. He left and went walking down the street. So I understand why that would look super suspicious, especially with the infant there. But I don't know. I want to give the man the benefit of the doubt that he just was really in a between a rock and a hard place, and he just was desperate and took the risk. I'm not going to judge him. Was it right or wrong? There's probably a lot of wrongness about that. A lot of terrible things could possibly have happened, but I guess he felt like he could trust his 10-year-old to manage things for this brief period of time. So I don't know. I can't say. I don't know what the laws are, honestly, about that in Georgia or anywhere else. But the fact that everyone was okay, nothing horrible happened. Was it risky? Yeah. But did it turn out okay? Sounds like it, except for the poor schlep who was trying to just get a freaking job.
Right. And now he has a charge on his record. He may not get a job. I wonder if the wrong government agency got involved this time and we needed like Child Protective Services to step in and provide resources for this father who's trying to take care of his children rather than the sheriff's office locking him up.
Yeah. Well, and what'd you say? He's 24 years old?
24.
Okay. So it sounds like, maybe at least the 10-year-old may not have been, his biological child. It could have been his current partner's child from a previous. And if he's a relatively new father with a 1-year-old, he's on the learning curve. He's 24.
Right.
That's young. That's a young parent, especially for a dude. Then this guy's probably just going, I don't know. What do? I know. Ronald McDonald, let's take him there.
Right.
I'm going to go get this job. I'll come right back, scoop him up, and all will be well. I mean, he probably just didn't think through about all of the, potential consequences of this. So,
Dads often don't. I hate to throw that level of shade, but dads often don't consider the full range of consequences. But I would assume the mother of these children or mothers were unavailable to watch the kids while dad had an opportunity and a job interview. And it's just a really unfortunate situation. And I hate that those kids, too, probably had to see dad get put in handcuffs and shoved in the back of a car. And, I don't think anybody benefited from this whatsoever. I will say that the community kind of rallied around this young man, and the comments were overwhelmingly, let's contribute to a GoFundMe, let's help him find a job, who can locate this family and help them get on their feet and whatever they need. There were really no negative comments in the comment section of this headline on social media. So
okay.
that's how the public received this.
Well, maybe it'll work out okay for him, I mean,
I hope
he didn't leave him at home alone.
Well, that's another thing. Think about like kids in the 70s and 80s, like latchkey kids who were walking from school and it's not like the world was entirely safe back then.
No.
And then they would be home by themselves. Who knows if there's a baby at home? We don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was a latchkey kid.
Turned out fine.
All's well. Turned out okay. I mean, pretty good.
Except for the ones who were kidnapped and unalived, everybody else turned out fine. You know what I mean? Like
I'm sorry, what'd you say? What was that?
See?
I'm sorry, you lost me.
It's crazy out here, Loree.
Right. Oh my God.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I have another one for you.
Okay.
Is using AI for schoolwork, so artificial intelligence for schoolwork today, the same as using a calculator for math homework 30 years ago? What do you think about this?
Well, it is that and oh so much more.
Is it just a resource that helps our students learn, or is it causing them to be unaware and unable to come up with answers on their own?
Yeah, it's both. It's of course both. So now we have another phenomenal tool. I love AI. I use it as a personal assistant. But because everything is available to, students, they can use it responsibly, like you would a calculator. verifying information, doing research. I mean, I use it for research or to verify something if I am going to put forth, an opinion or something, or write something. And I'm like, let me just check and make sure that I have my facts straight here. So I think for verification, research and stuff. But what's happening, of course, is now kids are using it to write complete essays and do all of the work. They're not using it like a modern day encyclopedia. We used to have to go to a library and pull out encyclopedias and do our research. Now you can have AI do that, which is wonderful, but you can also have it do everything for you. So that's a problem, because you're right. Now you're losing your kids or your young people are losing the ability to figure things out, to find things, to read something and then discern what it really means and understand it. You're just copy and pasting stuff. So yeah, it's another double-edged sword, kind of like social media.
Right.
There are pros and cons.
But it's kind of silly, don't you think, to act like this technology and beyond won't be available for these kids into adulthood. So if the
Mhm.
purpose of school is to prepare them for life after school, teaching them how to properly use and fact check these
Yeah.
resources is probably a better approach. So I think just cracking down on kids and punishing them for using AI as homework help is not not getting anybody anywhere.
No, I think it's just like we talked about with social media. It's a tool, and it's a great tool, but it is incumbent upon the parents to teach their kids how to use it as a tool, and not so that they don't end up handicapping themselves, right?
You just unlocked something in my head, Lori. This is
Okay.
gonna throw you. You are gonna not believe that I did this.
Oh,
When I was in school, we had this one teacher. I think he was a biology teacher, but he had a doctorate. He was the only teacher at our school who had a doctorate in my public high school, and it was physics. It was physics. But he had these notoriously difficult tests. But he would always tell us, if you know the formula and you have your calculator, you will have no problem with these tests. But these formulas were like a half a page long by themselves. And then you got to plug everything in the correct places. So there was one boy in my class who figured out that you can program the calculator to, you just type in the question and it'll run the whole problem by itself.
oh,
And so he was charging people like 25 or $50 to like transfer this program that he had written in his calculator so that we could cheat. But is it cheating? Because to this day, I have never needed the formula. Since the test, I have never needed to run the program. I've never had to question anything related to physics
right.
other than the basic stuff that I can find online.
Yeah. Yeah. So the question was it actually cheating? Is that the question?
It certainly was cheating because we broke the rules and did
Right.
what we weren't supposed to do.
Yeah.
However,
Does it
was
matter?
the teacher right in the long run?
Well, that's good. Because I would have done the same thing.
I know.
Yeah.
You know what? Work smarter, not harder. I think the guy who wrote the program into the calculators is a very successful tech person now.
Mm-hmm.
So my guess is he's also not doing physics full time, but programming that into his calculator and selling it to the classmates was perfect.
Yeah, brilliant. Brilliant entrepreneur. So, I mean, yeah. What age about was that for you?
We were probably sophomores or juniors, so,
Okay.
15, 16, maybe
Yeah.
17.
Yeah. So by high school age, you probably already know if you are drawn to those subjects and feel like you might likely want to continue them after high school into college. And you probably know if you want absolutely nothing to do with it, there's no way. So is it right or wrong? Well, cheating's always wrong. It is. But does it really matter in the big scheme of things? No, it doesn't, because you knew that wasn't, you weren't going to become a physicist. You
Not yet,
you
anyway.
probably already knew that you didn't know what you were gonna do, but you probably knew what you weren't going to do.
I did know that my goal at the time was to make good grades coming out of high school. So, mission accomplished.
Okay.
We
All right.
worked
So
smarter, not harder,
there you go.
and achieved that goal.
You found a workaround. And when it comes to schoolwork, I had that same mentality, and I had that same mentality even when my kids were in school. Just this, most of what you're doing here right now is going to have zero relevance in your life moving forward. So
Right.
focus on what you need to focus on, get the job done, and then don't worry about it, because once you get out of this phase, then you will go and you will focus on the things that are important to you, that are going to move you forward down the path that you want to go on. So that's my opinion, right or wrong. That's how I felt about it.
I love
Sylvie.
that perspective. I employ that perspective with my children as well because
Mhm.
honestly, sometimes we struggle in school in this household, and I can't fully relate to that, but I know that their dad had a pretty hard time getting through a lot of his coursework, and now he, you know, by many measures is a successful, productive member of society and has a great job. And, I remind them all the time school feels like your whole life right now, but your life goes far beyond 12th grade.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
I'm truly not.
Yeah. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of a part of your life. So there's that.
Use the tools. Use the tools.
Use the tools responsibly, and it's going to be okay. It's really going to be okay.
It will all be okay. I do think it's important for parents sometimes to have the proper perspective and to let their kids know that, like, hey, you're not just your report card.
Mhm.
You have other things to offer the world, and those things are not something that we are focused on for 8 hours a day behind a desk, but they are still valuable and important, and they mean more to
Mhm.
me personally, for
Right.
my children than their grades at school.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's where I am on that.
if you find some workarounds to get the job done at that age, so that says to me you're innovative. You've learned how to delegate. You've learned how to bring in different resources, and you get the job done. So I don't know. I think that's impressive. That
It
means
is.
you might
Don't
end up
squash the confidence out
right.
of our future, world
Innovators,
leaders.
right, and
Right.
entrepreneurs, and exactly.
Exactly.
So, all right.
Lori,
Uh, y-
since I've been working with you,
okay.
I've gotten this question
Oh,
a lot. I want
oh,
you to touch on this for some of our listeners.
all right. I'm not. What are we talking about?
Some some people have asked me, how is life coaching similar to and different from therapy? Traditional, doctor-led, medicated, perhaps therapy.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we're doing a whole hard left here. Well, good question. A lot of people have that question, and there is some overlap. But to make it simple, to summarize, therapy is really more directed at a patient being able to come in and talk about their feelings. What are they feeling, and what is it related to, so that the therapist can try to help them unpack and heal from whatever it is that is up for them. So it's a lot of talking. It's a lot of tell me how you feel, tell me why you're feeling like this, let's go through it, and investigating. And a lot of that means digging around a lot in the past, which a therapist is qualified to and trained to do, licensed. So it's the difference. That's fundamentally, there are other things, but that's essentially it. You're going to someone to a, a patient or a client is going to a therapist to really help them work through some things that they are that is either keeping them from actually living a healthy, stable life, because they haven't been able to heal or process whatever it is that has got them, emotional conundrum. All right. And sometimes those are people that are kind of below the baseline of being emotionally healthy or mentally healthy. Now, a coach is going to work with someone that is not below the baseline. That is outside the scope of practice. So it's people that are generally, emotionally, mentally stable, and they're coming to you to work on challenges, goals, processing things, and a coach is going to focus more on where you're at now and where you're trying to go. What are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to work through? So it's a very active, forward moving process. Coaching doesn't spend a lot of time swimming around in the past. It's not usually part of what we do, although occasionally there may be some, let's say, some false beliefs that a person has developed from a past situation. And then the coach's job is to help them uncover maybe their disempowering or false beliefs, and then supplant them with better beliefs, more empowering beliefs that serve them now and serve them for what they're trying to do or become in their life now. So it's very focused on now, where you at now, what's up for you now, and where are you trying to go, and let's figure out a strategy to get you there. Let's figure out what's stopping you. Let's figure out, right, how what's at risk if you don't get there. So does that help? I don't want to.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, in my personal experience, and I had 1 or 2 sessions with 2 or 3 different therapists throughout my life, and that never worked for me. That it just didn't speak to me and meet me where I needed to be met. It did not work for me. So something that I usually tell people when they do ask me this question is that you are a coach, and I put it in terms of like football. Like you are on the sideline with me, or we're in the locker room at halftime, and we're saying, okay, this is what the game is looking like and how we're gonna win this game.
Yeah.
Versus therapy is more like the next day we're talking about what happened during the game and how we can do this differently, or how that affected my emotions or whatever. And that just doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I get it. And I've heard a lot of that. But like with any job or career or profession, there are some people that are great at it, that really excel, and there are some people that suck. So in therapy and coaching is no different. There are phenomenal therapists, and there are some that are meh. People have been going to them for years, and why are you still going? How, if it's working?
If it works, do you have to keep going forever?
Exactly. So, but that's not, there's a lot of great therapists. There are a lot of great therapists that have gone on to get coaching certification, because the two together are really great. It's you get the best of both. And then with coaches are the same way. It's an unregulated industry, so you can get a lot of people that don't know what they're talking about, that aren't that great, and you can get phenomenal coaches that are the best thing that ever happened to somebody. So just like anywhere, doctors, anyone, any profession, there's people that are really good at what they do, and they're really effective at helping others. And then there's people that are just like, on autopilot. I don't know. But
I know in my life, Loree, you've been really effective. And so I want to invite anyone who is listening to this today and who has any questions about coaching, or any interests or any needs in that area, go to loreebischoff.com to get some additional information and to talk to Loree about some coaching. Maybe if you are jaded from therapy, which I was, and again, I had maybe had 4 bad therapy sessions in my life, and I was like, this is never going to work for me. I came into coaching with that same mindset, but it is a very different thing. And I think Loree has a very different approach too.
Ah, well, thank you very much. Thank you for that.
Of course.
Okay. Got it. You know me. I'm just like, you're promotion.
Don't put her on the spot. But you know where to find her. It's loreebischoff.com. If you need a little nudge in the right direction, if you need some coaching at halftime, Loree's the one. Go check out her website. Check us out as well. We are in the We're Talking Shift group on Facebook. I want to hear everybody's takes on this young man in Georgia getting arrested for leaving his kids behind. And I was thinking about it, Loree. I wonder if that oldest one wasn't his sibling. This could have just as easily been.
Oh, yeah. It could have been possibly the headlines made a mistake. That's
Right.
possible. That's very
I don't know if they specified that they were his children.
okay.
I'll have to dig into
Right.
that one
Dig
and
into that, because now I'm super
get some more.
curious. I want to know what's going on with this guy.
Now I'm wondering.
All right. So you guys, I really want to drive this home to you. On a serious note, we need to stay awake, and we need to call things what they are. So, our language is meant to help us communicate ideas precisely and truthfully. And when we start altering the meaning of words or creating new meanings altogether, we distort reality. And that's when, things start to feel normal to people, but then people start to lose touch with what's actually true. So when we're not really free to speak, if we have to tiptoe around certain words or code our language, then we're accepting a very sneaky form of censorship. And I call bullshit on that. It's wrong. So, hey, remember, control the language and you control the narrative, including the truth. So let's protect the integrity of language, and let's call things what they are. Let's teach our kids that clarity and truth are way more important than being algorithm friendly, and that truth and clarity should never be compromised. Words matter and meaning matters, and preserving language, the language that we share, is one of the most important and powerful things that we can do for a healthy society. So on that note, thanks for being here and hanging out with us. Stay awake, speak truthfully, and go make some epic shift happen in your lives. See ya.